I can understand why a lot of Americans would be confused.
A bad situation here when OPEC says the reason for $105 or $106 a barrel oil is the falling value of the dollar, and you won't address that issue. Where do we go to find out who's right?
Well, as he just said, the Treasury Secretary is where you go to talk about the dollar. It's a long-standing policy that predates this administration, and I'm not going to change it today, but Treasury can talk about it.
I don't expect you to change it, but I do expect you to be able to say whether OPEC is completely wrong about this, or whether there is at least something to their claim that the dollar is responsible for the high price of oil right now.
Wendell, I'm under strict instructions and have been from the beginning to not talk about the dollar, and I'm not going to get fired to satisfy your question.
I expect that.
I can understand why a lot of Americans would be confused as to why this company and not another company would get access to federal money. Why any company. I think that this is, we are dealing with very challenging times, and Secretary Paulson and the Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke and the President's economic advisors had determined that there were some of these companies were so big that to allow them to fail would have caused even greater harm and damage to the economy. So the goal has been to take action where necessary to promote stability and strength in the marketplace so that we can prevent or limit more damage to the broader economy. We would have more for you on that. Go ahead, Nancy.
In 2005, speaking in Tbilisi, the president said to a large crowd of Georgians that the path to freedom you have chosen is not easy, one you will not have to travel alone. Did the president, in a sense, lead the Georgians on?
I completely reject the suggestion. And maybe you want to rephrase your question, but lead them on to do what?
Well, lead them on to believe that they had more backing from the U.S.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think you should go back and look at what Secretary Rice had said, what we said yesterday in a document that we released later last night that gave you a chronology of all that we've done in the past several days. But I think you need to go back. Yes, President Bush went to Georgia, first president to do so. First president to stand up and say, we support you, we are going to stand with you. And I was there for that event, and I remember it being very emotional.
CIA leak case, how will that affect whether the president issues a pardon for him?
And we never comment on whether or not the president will be granting or not granting pardons to anybody. So I'm not able to comment.
It's still an open question.
Well, if he chooses to pursue a pardon, there's that route, and of course the Constitution provides the president the powers of the pardon. And we just cannot speculate, as we don't on any possible pardons.
Well, he didn't talk about what Scooter Libby had actually done in that.
And as I said, I haven't spoken to the president about it, so I'm not able to provide you anything else at this moment. Individuals who are involved, and I'll refer you to their statements as well until I have something more.
But not from the individual who could have fired or reprimanded someone for disclosing the name, as he said that he would do at one point.
This matter has been thoroughly investigated. There's a special prosecutor. He did not bring criminal charges. So,
but that's not the issue, Dan. The issue is the President of the United States commenting, which he did forcefully at the time, and has never said anything since, about the propriety in his mind of his advisors conducting themselves in this fashion. So it's not reasonable to expect him. I mean, other people talking about it is not germane to whether the President weighs in.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's unreasonable to ask. I'm saying I didn't have a chance to talk to the president, so I have nothing to give you. You saw the employment report released this morning, a loss of 84,000 jobs and an increase in the unemployment rate to 6.1%. There's no question that the labor market is not as strong as we'd like, and these were disappointing numbers. We want to see the economy return to job growth, and we understand for Americans also to know that in addition to these numbers, there are other numbers that show that the economy is starting to show some signs of growth. For example, the growth rate from last week and also on productivity and exports, those numbers have been positive, which show that our economy is quite resilient.
Dana, you painted a fairly upbeat picture of the economy despite the job losses, and yet most economists say that the kinds of job losses that were reported today tend to be the kind we see in the early stages of a recession. What would it take for the President and the administration to begin considering a second stimulus package?
We've gone through the recession thing before. I just told you that the last two quarters showed growth, and there's plenty of economists out there, and I'm sure they're very intelligent. They have a lot of resources at their fingertips, but I just haven't heard anybody talking necessarily about a recession. The economic stimulus. Brianna?
You pointed out, one of the positive numbers that you're pointing to is the growth rate for the last quarter, but it's widely accepted by a lot of economists that it was the economic stimulus checks that went out that was responsible for that. I mean, isn't that maybe pointing to an artificially inflated number to say there are some strong areas of the economy?
No, that was precisely the reason that we did the economic stimulus package, is so that we could get our country back on a footing of growth, so that it could help get us through an economic downturn. So that's exactly why we did it, and it's having the intended impact.
The White House was aware of the negotiations between the Hunt Oil Company and the Kurdistan government.
As far as I know, I don't know of anybody who was aware of it. As we had said before, but the State Department had said that they had been aware of it, and they had raised questions about it, and that's what they're maintaining today. So I don't know of anybody in the White House who was aware of it.
Everybody from civics class on up has had a certain understanding of the way our government works. And this EO clarifies more than 200 years of constitutional scholarship about the way our system works.
I think that, I mean, maybe it's me, but I think that everyone's making this a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. But this Vice President was given executive duties to handle.
How is being a part of another branch, I guess it's debatable, but how is that an out?
It's not that's irrelevant, because the President never intended for the Vice President to be subject to the executive order.
The office of the Vice President introduces that into the argument, into the debate. Well, we're not part of the executive branch.
I think that is also a fact. And as I said to Kelly, I'll see if I can get more from the Vice President's office to see if how they connected the two, or if they didn't.
He can argue he's part of both, but he can't possibly argue that he's part of neither. It seems like he's saying he's part of neither.
Okay.
You don't have an opinion on that?
You have me thoroughly confused. I don't know what's in the letter, but I don't think it had anything to do with substance of the travel.
The President and you and others at the podium have always cited the idea that the appeals process was still underway for refusal to comment on why no one was ever reprimanded or dismissed for disclosing Valerie Plame's name. Now that the appeals process is over at Libby's choice, will the White House be what are the prospects for the White House being more forthcoming on this?
Yeah, as I said, I wasn't able to talk to the President before the briefing. I will see if I can get you anything in additional.
The President has said publicly several times in 2 consecutive news conferences 3 months ago, and you have said it over and over again, we do not torture. Now he has admitted that he did sign off on torture, he did know about it. So how do you reconcile this credibility gap?
Ellen, you're taking liberties with what the President said. The United States is not torturing any detainees in the global war on terror. And General Hayden, amongst others, have spoken on Capitol Hill fully in this regard, and it is. I'll leave it where it is, when the President is accurate in saying what he said.
That's not my question. My question is, why did he say publicly we do not torture?
Because
when he really did know that we do.
No, that's what I mean, Helen. We've talked about the legal authorities.
That we did not.
I am saying we did not. Yes.
How can you when you have photographs and everything else? I mean, how can you say that when he admits that he knew about it?
Helen, I think that I think you're conflating some issues, and you're misconstruing what the President said.
Of this country.
And what I'm telling you is we have torture has not occurred, and you can go back through all the public record and just make sure I would just respectfully ask you not to misconstrue what the President said.
In this room that we torture, we have tortured.
I am denying that. Elaine, did you have it?
I have one on Zimbabwe, actually.
Where is everybody?
Prime Minister Gordon Brown has called for an arms embargo.
I can understand why a lot of Americans would be confused. I mean, maybe it's me, but I think that everyone's making this a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. Okay.
You don't have an opinion on that?
You have me thoroughly confused.